Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. The video today is a special one. Both of the stories that will be narrated are the Shadows Within originals. We hope that you enjoy. Let's get into it. I need to get all of your opinions on what I should do. This feels urgent. This all began last Wednesday, exactly 1 week ago. I was at home by myself, as I usually am on Wednesdays, because my daughter is at school and my wife is at work. It is really the only day of the week that I get a little peace and quiet and time to myself. I was really excited for this day because I had just picked up 7 Days to Die for my PC and I had planned to veg out and get some good relaxing game time in. Everything was normal. I had been playing for about an hour when my phone rang. It was an unlisted number, which is not rare for me since anytime my family calls from the States, it comes up as unlisted. I answered the call by saying hello. There was no sound on the other end, barring a bit of static. Static on a call isn't very odd for me either, since those same calls from the US sometimes can come through a little staticky. I switched the audio of the call from speaker to the head speaker on the phone. I heard heavy static at this time and a voice that sounded like my wife, saying hello in almost a panicky voice. I could not make out a word that she was saying, so I hung up and waited a few minutes for her to call me back. I had just gotten back into a groove in my game when my phone rang again. Same issue. Nothing but static, with my wife saying hello in a very distorted voice. I decided that she obviously needed to get in touch with me because she never calls me during working hours. I picked up my phone and dialed her office phone. The phone rang a few times and then the receptionist answered the phone. I asked to speak with my wife, who works as a dentist, and the receptionist told me to hold because she thought she was with a patient. I found this odd since it couldn't have been more than 30 seconds since I received her last call. I would never usually ask them to pull her out of an appointment, but I honestly believed that she really needed to talk to me since she had rung twice. My wife comes to the phone and, sounding a bit irritated, said, "Hey, what's up?" I said, "Chill. I'm calling you back, so no reason to sound mad." She then tells me that she didn't call. We go on to say goodbye because the call was pointless at that point. I sit back down feeling a bit anxious. I have really bad anxiety issues, and these are the type of circumstances that really set it off. I get back into my game and enjoy a nice 3-hour session without any further interruption. It was around 1:30 p.m. when I closed out my game and opened my web browser. I had about an hour to waste until I was supposed to pick my daughter up from school. It is important that I explain to you what our apartment is like before I tell you the rest of what is going on. We live in a block of units with 10 apartments in each building. There is a glass security door at the front of each building that you cannot access without a key code, or phoning directly into my home. At 2 p.m. sharp, there was a very light knock on my door. It is actually quite rare for anyone to be knocking on our front door, so it caught me a little by surprise. I walked to the door and hear my wife's voice, but it wasn't my wife's voice at the same time. The fear that overcame my entire body when I got about 3 feet from the door cannot be explained. I froze, and sweat immediately began to pour down my face. Oh, open the door," the voice on the other side said. I had the deepest sense of dread at this point, and knew with every ounce of my being that I did not want to open that door. I called my wife's work again, and when she got to the phone this time, she seemed very irritated with me for calling. I explained that someone was obviously at the door trying to impersonate her. She replied, "I'm sorry that it's going on, but Dr. Franks and I are in the middle of an extraction and I need to get back in there. Just call the police." I did just that. The police came by about an hour later and told me that they had seen an odd-looking woman outside of my building, but when they started to approach her, she walked into the woods. Officer Mathis said he took a step into the woods right behind her, but he could not see her. They asked me if she had taken anything or damaged any property. I told them no, and they proceeded to tell me that they can't do anything about it because she had not broken any laws. I thanked the officers for coming by and saw them to my front door. There were no more issues the rest of that day or since, until tonight. My daughter and wife went to visit her parents about an hour away and are staying there the night, then coming home in the morning. I had a knock on my front door about 15 minutes ago with the same voice trying to mimic my wife saying, "Let me in." I just ignored it and went back about my night. Now I'm frozen in fear because I just looked out my glass screen doors and standing in the corner of my garden behind a tree is a woman, my wife. But it's not my wife. She looks like a distorted version of my wife. This creature is hunched over with what looks like open wounds all over her body. It is about 5 feet tall, and I can smell a putrid smell coming in through my slightly ajar kitchen window. What do I do? It's just standing there mimicking my wife's voice saying, "Oh, open the door. Let me in." I don't know much about cryptids, but I'm thinking that this thing is either a shapeshifter or a wendigo. I do not know what to do. How do I get rid of it? Please answer, and answer fast.
Laying in my bed, it was a cold, rainy, wet, wintry night. For some reason, it felt colder than normal. I could just be feeling the cold more due to being tired because the last 22 hours I've been up at the hospital, sitting outside my dad's critical care room, hoping he was going to be okay. You see, driving home that night from work, my dad's car either swerved or slipped on black ice, causing him to crash in a cement culvert on the side of the highway. The nurses explained that he was stable but not up for visitors or talking yet and that he needs his rest. This is where my story brings me home and it all starts. I had been watching some YouTube videos when suddenly I heard a blood-curdling scream. A voice whispered, "He saw me at the culvert on the side of the road." My body started to tremble in fear. What did this mean? Who said this? With a start, I heard my mum in the kitchen. I managed to get the strength to climb out of bed and walk down the hall to the kitchen where my mum was making coffee. "Are you okay?" my mum said. "Yes," I replied. "Mum, did you hear that voice?" "What do you mean, did I hear a voice, Monica?" "The voice saying that he saw her at the culvert." "No, sweetie, perhaps you had fallen asleep watching the shadows within again and you dreamed it." "Yeah, I guess, but to me it seemed real." I went for a shower, only to hear the girl's voice again, this time more chilling. "He's seen me at the culvert. Please help me get home." I froze with fear. I managed to get the confidence to yell, "Who are you?" But no answer. I went back to my room, laid down and closed my eyes. That is when memories of my past came back to haunt me. You see, as a child, my parents sent me to a therapist because of my so-called make-believe friends. But no, these were not make-believe friends. They were real voices, unfortunately from the dead. As years went by, I learnt to block them out until now. But why now? Why me? Did a ghostly hitchhiker from the hospital follow me home? I closed my eyes and I fell fast asleep. I suddenly saw a pretty dark-haired girl, no more than 19, in a flowered dress. She approached me with a very stern and worried look on her face. "He's seen me," she said, "on the side of the road near the culvert. I just want to go home. My name is Sarah Horton. The man in the red car took me and hurt me. The only thing I remember was standing on the side of that road trying to wave down the car before it crashed. Please help me go home." I suddenly woke up, my sheets soaked from sweat, not believing what had just happened. Was it a dream? Was it real? Am I going crazy? I suddenly jumped up on my computer to search missing persons in my area, and what I found brought chills to my bones. A paper printed on June the 6th, 1986 read, "Missing girl, 19 years of age, dark hair, last seen in a yellow and blue flowered dress, leaving Bishop Library, talking to an unknown man in a red car. I read over this at least 5 times, trying to process what I just read. No way, I thought. It couldn't be. So I read on. The article went on to say that the police had classed Sarah as a runaway. Her parents strongly disagreed with this. Sarah's case had been filed away as a cold case until now. All her parents want is their little girl to come home. This has to be her. She is not a runaway. How can I help find her? Then suddenly I remembered what the girl in my dream had said to me about the culvert and the car crash. Oh my, I thought it couldn't be. Oh my, what if? I need to see my dad. The following morning I went straight to the hospital, hoping my dad was up to have visitors and could talk. The nurses came out to me and said, "Monica, he will see you now. Please take it easy with him. He is still very weak." I said, "Yes, of course." "Dad, how are you? I'm so glad you're okay." "Dad, there is something I need to ask you. Did you see something the night of your accident that made you swerve off that road and hit the culvert?" Suddenly my dad became deathly white and his heart rate went up. He looked at me and said in a very low, shaky voice, "Yes." "Did I hit her?" I said, "What?" He replied again, "Did I hit that pretty young girl? She was on the road. I swerved not to hit her, and that's when I hit the culvert. That's all I remember." "No," I said, "there was no one there." I then explained to my dad about the voices and what Sarah had said to me and about the dreams that led me to read about her in the old newspaper. After hearing this, my dad looked and said, "We need to tell the police. They need to search that area near the culvert." The next day, after a lot of explaining from my dad to the authorities, the police started searching in that area for Sarah Horton. She had been missing for nearly 2 decades now. My dad had been home for a week. We were about to leave for church when the phone suddenly rang. Mum answered. "Oh my, yes, of course. I'm so very sorry," she said in a very sad voice. My dad and I just looked at each other. Mum came out and said in a shaky voice, "That was the police. They found Sarah. Her family has said to thank you both in the aid of helping find her. Her remains were uncovered next to the culvert. They can now bring Sarah home and find the monster who did this to her." My heart was racing, broken at the same time. My dad and I grabbed each other and began to cry. That night, after I went to sleep, I saw Sarah one last time. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me with a peaceful gaze and smiled. I woke up feeling sad, but relieved that we helped bring Sarah home to her family and justice for their loss.
Thank you for joining us today for these creepy tales. Please like, subscribe, share, and post a comment. Be sure to click that notification bell so that you will be alerted anytime we post a video. Until the next one.